Hello and welcome to The Voluntarist. In this video, I wanted to talk about the non-aggression principle. So there's a lot of misunderstandings, misconceptions about the non-aggression principle and what it means, what it applies to, what it is. So first off, the non-aggression principle simply states that the initiation of force, or I guess since it's called the non-aggression principle, the initiation of aggression is wrong. And a lot of people have refined this. In my opinion, it's a good refinement. The initiation of violence is wrong. In the sense of being a strong, solid moral principle, it really focuses in on the actual initiation of like real violence. So like punching, murdering, raping, stuff like this. Things that directly obstruct a person's ability to use their most valuable of properties, their own body. Through the principle of self-ownership, we can expand the non-aggression principle to include things like property other than the body. So like your house or your land or your car or whatever. So, but the way that I've grown to view the non-aggression principle is more, it's less of a strong moral principle, like in the sense of like a law. It's less of a law, like I used to think about it, kind of like just replacing all the laws on the books with the initiation of force is wrong, and then the police like enforcing stuff like that. That's kind of how I used to think of it, but now I've grown to think of it as more like an observation of universal preferences in people. And what I mean by this, and Stefan Molyneux, he runs Free Domain Radio. If you haven't heard of him, I don't know how in the heck you found me before you found him. Chances are you already know who Stefan Molyneux is. But if you haven't, and I'm amazed that you're watching this video and you've never heard of Stefan Molyneux. So let me tell you, Stefan Molyneux is fantastic. Or he was. He's become rather pro-Trump, which is unfortunate. I don't agree with that. But about 2 years ago, actually, was it about 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago? Wow. I kind of started on this journey to voluntarism, and after Ron Paul kind of turned me this way. I know I'm getting off track, but this is important. After Ron Paul kind of turned me towards libertarianism, I stumbled across Stefan Molyneux, and it was really Stefan that really brought me all the way to getting rid of all of these, the initiation of force is wrong unless you're the government, and really applying that universal principle to everything, not just interpersonal interactions between the citizens. So this brought me all the way to voluntarism, and I will forever be thankful to Stefan for his philosophical insight and his charisma. He's pretty awesome, and every once in a while he will release videos like that still. And I will be so thankful when this stupid election is over, so maybe he can get back to catering to his libertarian and ANCAP voluntarist base, rather than kind of pandering to these conservatives and Republicans and the alt-right that kind of wander over to his videos because he's trash-talking Hillary and defending Trump. But with all that out of the way, Stefan has done a lot of work. He even wrote a book on UPB, Universally Preferable Behavior, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it is. And it's his theory that the initiation of force is not universally preferable. And I'm probably butchering it. I haven't actually read it, so please go read that if you're interested. But I've watched his video kind of summary of it. I'm pretty sure it's free, so if you're interested, go check it out, or just go visit his YouTube channel. But he's talking about this observation that, if you've got two people in a room, there's kind of this mutual expectation that the other person is not going to try and kill you, right? Like if you're walking down the street, you've got this expectation that no one's going to just start pummeling your face in. I mean, that's what allows society to exist. That's what allows us to work alongside one another, whether it be, at a paper company or like producing steel for the construction industry or whatever you do for a living. You have to work with other people, and there's this expectation between you and everyone else there that no one's just going to go berserk and start massacring people. It's this mutual expectation of peaceful interpersonal interactions. And this is a universal principle where people don't want to be attacked. And it's also relatively universal that if someone is attacked, they ought to have that ability to fight back if they choose. If they don't want to fight back, the non-aggression principle, by saying that the initiation of force is wrong, implies that self-defense is permissible. It's morally permissible. And the key word there is permissible. It's not obligatory. You're not obligated morally to defend yourself against an attack. You can, and no one's going to fault you for it. If you don't, that's okay too. You can be a pacifist and let your face get beaten in. I wouldn't do that, or at least I don't think I would. If I thought fighting back was a better option than just sitting there and taking it, you better bet I would fight back. But this again is why I say that the non-aggression principle is an observation of human action and human expectations regarding interactions between people. Because it doesn't go so far as to say that self-defense is obligatory. It doesn't go so far as to say that anything is obligatory. Because people have different preferences. Some people are true pacifists. They wouldn't fight back even if they were being brutally attacked. It's just the observation that the initiation of force is wrong because universally people do not want to be attacked. And if you want to be attacked, it's not really considered assault anymore. It's something that you want. It's something that you're consenting to. So there is the NAP heavily implies this condition of consent. If you consent to something, it's okay because you want it. It's the initiation of force on a person is immoral when they don't consent to it, and that's another heavy implication of the NAP. So with all that out of the way, with the way that this kind of viewing the NAP as less of a moral principle, it is, but if we can look at it through the lens of an observation of universal preferences. With all that in mind, there's this question on Reddit, and if you watch a lot of my videos, I talk about what happens on Reddit a lot, and that might annoy some of you, but it's fine. Dumb questions can really spark inspiration to talk about a subject. For instance, this guy says, burning tires on my neighbor's bonfire are belching thick black smoke around the neighborhood and into the air on my property. Am I allowed to shoot him? So there's black smoke coming from a bonfire, and it's filling the air on his property, and he's breathing it, and it's kind of pissing him off. So he's wondering, can I just shoot the guy? But the point of this question is that black smoke from tires notoriously carry a bunch of really bad chemicals. It's not good for your health. There's carcinogens in there. It's probably not good to breathe in. If you've ever been camping, you've been around like campfires and whatever, you've probably been told, don't throw plastic into the campfire, and then lo and behold, what are you going to do? You're going to throw some plastic into the campfire because someone telling you not to do something isn't enough. You have to try it for yourself. But so you throw some plastic into the campfire, and what happens? It starts burning this black smoke. It turns out black smoke's really bad for you to breathe in. So the point of this question is, if someone's filling my property with this black toxic smoke in the air, do I have a right to act in self-defense and kill them? My response is, you could try just talking to him first. I mean, why is your first instinct to just kill the guy? I mean, if you shot him, you would be investigated for murder, and most likely you would be prosecuted and punished accordingly. Because the NAP, while it implies heavily that self-defense is permissible, it doesn't make any comment. And the whole point of this question is to attack the non-aggression principle. It's like, all right, self-defense is okay. Well, I'll just shoot everyone that pisses me off. That's not what the non-aggression principle does. It doesn't even address the severity of self-defense, the severity of actions taken in self-defense, let alone the scenarios in which you can act in self-defense. So this guy kind of misses the point of the non-aggression principle, and you get a lot of questions like this. And I know he doesn't explicitly mention the NAP, so I'm kind of assuming that he's attacking the non-aggression principle, but the question is addressed to ANCAPs, so you can kind of piece this together. That's my chain of thought anyways. If I've missed something important and I'm griping about the wrong thing, please leave a comment in the comment section to set me straight. Then I go on to say, if he doesn't listen, call whatever company you or your neighborhood uses for protection and threaten prosecution. Surely, if this was occurring, the other neighbors would be upset as well. You shouldn't just shoot him, because that's not a balanced response to the black smoke. So the NAP states that the initiation of force is wrong, but society at large would hold you accountable for overreacting to things. So, like I said, this goes back to the NAP being an observation of universal preferences. So with that said, we can make the further observation that for the most part, people think that shooting someone for doing something that isn't immediately threatening your life is overkill. And this is evidenced by the reactions from people every time there's a police shooting. The first question that gets asked is, did he have a gun? Was he threatening the officer's life? Was the officer then justified in the shooting? Because if the officer killed someone who was not directly and imminently threatening their life, people consider it to be overkill. And then there's an outcry, and there's protests, and there's rioting. And so we can apply that same observation to this scenario. If you shoot someone, if you kill them dead for stinking up your property with cancerous smoke, yeah, they are harming you. There's no argument against that. They are harming you by dumping this toxic smoke all over the air in your property, whether intentionally or not. And that's kind of the other thing. While it's not really talked about in the non-aggression principle, society at large does care whether someone intended to do harm or if something was an accident. It does play a part in the way people perceive the actions of individuals. And so all of this would play into this situation. In a voluntary society where there is this kind of polycentrism, where there are multiple courts ruling in like the same geographical area and overlapping jurisdictions, then they have to compete with one another to get business by enforcing laws fairly that are kind of wanted by society at large. So if you've got a large population and most of them think that capital punishment for murdering someone is okay, then chances are the courts are going to enforce executions for people who are convicted of murder. And And likewise, if people think that chopping someone's hands off for stealing is okay, that's probably what's going to be enforced. Now we're at a point in society, especially in Western civilization, where that's not the case. People don't think that chopping appendages off is a just is a just way of adjudicating criminal cases. No one chops appendages off. Heck, the death penalty is out the door. I mean, it's slowly working its way out of the legal system at this point. So we're becoming more and more peaceful in the way that we handle crime, which is a good thing in my opinion. But in a polycentric society, these courts would handle it in accordance to kind of the will of the people, kind of like any business would cater to the whims of their of their customers, of the people that patronize their business because they want to stay in business, right? You gotta businesses are far more accountable to the public than any government bureaucracy ever will be. Period. And so that's kind of the idea behind polycentrism as one of the dominant judicial theories of how law enforcement and stuff like that would work in a free society. Going back to the original question, we say, but if threatening prosecution with your security team or your security agency doesn't work, then the security firm would be required to prosecute in order to meet their customers, aka the neighborhood's expectations, because it's their customers, right? These people in the neighborhood pay the security company to protect them from people doing harm to their persons or their property. In this case, it's probably a little of both. I mean, the black smoke's getting all over everything. It's probably leaving a layer of just nastiness all over these people's houses and appliances and whatever. And it's also harming their actual physical health because it's full of, like, cancer. The security agency would, in this case, pretty much be forced to detain this individual because they're not stopping, and they've been confronted before. So they're going to detain him or maybe just summon him to a hearing or something. But I at this point, I would let the professionals worry about it. This is where speculating as to how this process would continue gets kind of pointless, in my opinion. I could do it, and it would be fun for me. But in the context of this particular conversation, there's really no point unless someone really wants to go there. Because think about it this way. In a free society, there's no monopoly, right? And this is something that people forget, so I really want to make this point clear. I know I'm like 19 minutes into the video, but it's important. When people talk about how things would, quote-unquote, work in a free society, they're statists especially, and I use that term for literally anyone who is not a voluntarist or an ANCAP. So it's this giant blanket term just referring to everyone but us. And that's kind of an inflammatory thing to do, but it's actually really late at night and I don't feel like coming up with better terminology. So the misconception that statists have with this voluntarist theory is when voluntarists start talking about how things would work in a free society, they have this mindset of like they're listening to a politician tell them how their lives are going to be run. And I can understand that. We've kind of been groomed to think that way. I mean, that is the society that we live in. But it takes a little bit of extra mental effort to pull yourself from your current reality and place yourself into an alternate one and try to see it from the perspective of, actually living in a free society. What would things look like? So when voluntarists talk about this kind of stuff, they're not telling you how society would be run, and this is how everyone would run their security firm. This is how everyone would run their court. This is how every bakery would be run. This is how every postal service would be run. What they're telling you is how they think most people would run their business. And really, if you really dive down deep into it, what they're actually saying is how they would expect themselves to run their own business. Because these are their ideas on how the business should be run. So you can make the connection there. If they think that's how a business should be run, if they were running that business, that's how they would run it. And that might be a little bit of a stretch. Maybe I can get a logician in here to just check my logic. But when I speculate about how a free society would function, I am really just talking about, okay, this is how my court would work. This is how I would run a security system, or a security agency, or a dispute resolution organization, or whatever they're called. This is how I would run a grocery store. This is how I would run a charity. This is how I would run a watchdog organization. Because this is really important. Voluntarism is individualism. That's a little bit of a stretch. It's not the definition of individualism or anything. But I will go so far as to say it's like the epitome of individualism. Like, if you follow individualism to like its absolute, and then you apply those principles to like a societal system of how society organizes itself, voluntarism is ultimately what you get to. Well, you could go like one step further and say like isolationism, but then you wouldn't even have a society. You would just have a bunch of people living totally detached from one another and never interacting with one another. So assuming we still have a civilization, and assuming there is a society to talk about, voluntarism is like the epitome of individualism. So long story short, when we're talking about this kind of stuff, it's just speaking on it from like a personal perspective, how you would do things. I think this is a huge sticking point when we're communicating with statists. And again, there I go using that word, Sargon of Akkad. I watched that video. He's got a problem with that word, and I agree with him to an extent. So when I say statists, I just mean not voluntarists. So non-voluntarists, I think there's a really sticking point when we're trying to communicate these ideas, because they think we're spouting off government policy, when in reality, we're just saying, this is how I would do it. I mean, Joe over there might do it differently, and my bet is I would outcompete him and take his business, and then he would be working for me someday because my way is better. And this is kind of the beauty of like the entrepreneurial attitude in voluntarism, which I think is great, because when you have heavy competition, which is basically the state that would exist, that was a really poor choice of words, which is basically the environment you would have without a state. That's why it was a poor choice of words. When you have heavy competition like that, the best ideas, the best business practices rise to the top, and they're slowly over time adopted by everyone. And then the next round of best industry practices or whatever will rise to the top, and they'll slowly be adopted by everyone. And this is how society progresses. It's really important to understand these sticking points when you're communicating with people. And I don't know, I've been thinking about this for a really long time, and I'm actually really glad that I was able to make this video to discuss it, because I do think it's important that we understand these misconceptions and not just get pissed off at people when they misunderstand our arguments and go like, oh, you're an idiot. What are you, against peace? What, you like initiating force? Like, no, try to understand where they're coming from. You have to put yourself in their shoes. I mean, we were all statists at some point in our lives. You aren't, I mean, unless your parents were voluntarists, which I doubt. I mean, it very well could be that is the case. but we all at some point in our lives made excuses for the initiation of force on the part of the state. For whatever reason, we thought that was okay. So it really shouldn't be that difficult for us at this point in our lives to empathize with people who disagree with us for whatever reason and try to look at these problems from their perspective. Because if we can do that, it will greatly increase our effectiveness in communicating our ideas, like the non-aggression principle and like polycentrism, which is a really cool idea, and I think more people should discuss it. As you know, like when people ask, well, how would this work? Well, polycentrism, and this is how I would run my business, as an example. And then you really have to explain the whole individualist thing. You know, basically everything I've been talking about for like the last, 7 or 8 minutes. But yeah, so that's really all I wanted to talk about. So this whole conversation or discussion was started by some question on Reddit, asking if it's okay to shoot a guy for burning tires in the neighborhood. So it's kind of funny how a simple question like that can spark just all these ideas and discussions, which is really why I think the internet is just an absolutely beautiful place. I mean, it's got its share of ugliness, but at the end of the day, when you're exchanging ideas like this, I think it's a huge net positive for humanity. Wow, I've covered a lot in this video. I've just been bouncing from one topic to the other. It's like an all-in-one discussion video. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and call it there, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. It means a lot to see the views on these videos, and whenever I get a like, it's just awesome. I have 20 subscribers, and that's honestly way more than I thought I would ever get on this channel. But I just want to say thank you for your continued support and your continued viewership, and I hope that you stick around and I keep producing quality content for you guys. So one more time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.